getting harder and harder for Tesla to keep a secret. And I mean, can we really blame them? Because these are vehicles that Tesla is literally going to be making hundreds of thousands of per year. There's got to be some employees seeing this shutdown process that Tesla themselves told us was going to happen this quarter. They said to expect Q3 production to be lower than Q2 due to factory upgrades. And all the employees working at the factory are obviously going to be able to pick up on some of these things. Some of them who don't like their jobs too much are going to be taking close-up shots of the interior, which we're actually now seeing some. Of course, not as amazing as we'd all like, a finalized, completed one of the entire thing, the new steering wheel, the new display, but we are getting some material design updates that feel fairly believable, in my opinion. Like, I guess there's a chance all of this is being faked, but I think it's legitimate because of how accurate of depiction it is of existing other Tesla products. So, for one, it seems like that wood trim across the front of the Model 3 is finally going away. Some people may like that. I personally always thought it felt kind of out of place. You're supposed to be in this greener electric vehicle that's better for the environment, but you want this depiction of like tree bark on the side. I know it's not actual wood, but even when I first showed the Model 3 interior to my little sister, she was like, what the heck? Why is it so wooden? So this up close shot is showing some kind of fabric mesh that seems to be replacing it. We also have a top down view showcasing how this new dashboard compares to the existing dashboard. Thank you to the people sacrificing their jobs for these videos, by the way. We appreciate that. But yeah, while it certainly looks sleeker and a bit more minimal, which is hard to believe with a Model 3, right? Already like industry leading in terms of interior minimalism, and I think by getting rid of that white beam across the front or that wooden beam, depending on which interior color choice you went with, there's less metal trim parts you have to align with, and likely there's less need for the door to be properly aligned with the dash because you don't have those little triangular sails on the side of the doors like the current Model 3 design does. So my first impressions is, yes, it does look a bit more fresh, a bit more modern, but ultimately also a little bit more cheap. And I do think that's the intention. If we're following in the existence of Project Highland, then you have to acknowledge where that original Highland term came from. It was a Reuters report. And in that same report, that's when they said that the intention of Project Highland was to update the Model 3 interior to make it more desirable, but also more cost effective. And I think this is probably going in that right train of thinking, but I honestly think the main reason it's probably going to be more attractive and interesting to people is simply because it's different. It's not what we've had in the past, and I think it will wow people because the Model 3 interior and exterior has basically remained unchanged since 2017, so any kind of noticeable upgrade is clearly going to attract a lot of eyes, and people are going to be like, oh wow, that's the new, exciting, updated Model 3. That one's different from all the previous ones. But once we get past that wow stage, once we get into the normalcy of it, I do think it kind of looks a little bit cheaper. And we also have a new updated view of the door panel as well, showcasing the abandonment of the Alcantara interior. So that's still a thing, even on the black or white interior of the Model 3 and Y. You've got those triangular little sails on the side, but then you've got this soft fabric Alcantara material that your arm pushes against when you open the door. They turned the door button into that whole kind of plastic piece where you rest your thumb. So instead of a button that is surrounded by a plastic piece, it's all a singular piece. I'm not sure if that means the Project Highland Model 3 is going to have a capacitive button. By the way, in case you weren't aware, the refreshed Model S doesn't have a physical door button that clicks, but there is a little taptic feedback. That sounds like it would be more expensive though. So my guess is that on Highland, it's still a physical click, but it's just the button has replaced that whole plastic enclosure like we have on the current Model 3 and Y design. And they've replaced the Alcantara with this fabric material that looks a little bit more durable in my opinion. Alcantara, I feel like, always picks up kind of oils and dirt a little bit easier than what this kind of flatter, more smooth material looks like. But yeah, ultimately, I have to admit, kind of looks a little bit cheaper, but again, I think that's the point of the refresh. And also, we've gotten a second angle on this door interior design, which showcases a more upward mounted speaker on this door system, opposed to all of the speakers just being in the bottom corner of the door. Now they've got a little circle that's a tad higher. I'm not sure if that means the sound system is going to be drastically improved, or another theory I have is they're simply moving one of the speakers from that top column down to be a little bit lower. And yes, that might save on cost for the headliner in the Model 3, and maybe Tesla's just going to be relying a tad more on, spatial audio trickery to make the sound system seem like it's just as good as before, but without having to use as much wiring or having to to have those cutouts in the headliner, because I believe on the rear-wheel drive Model 3 like mine, which technically has the partial premium interior, those speakers in the top corners are not even activated. So maybe Tesla's looking for a solution where they don't have to have excess cutouts or speaker grills with no speakers behind them, and that's supposed to help streamline and simplify the manufacturing of the Model 3 interior. But that's the overall consensus I'm getting from all of these leaks, is that there's tiny changes that may seem a little bit confusing, like why would they change that or why would they add that? And my guess is every tiny little detail, every tiny little tweak has something to do with, well, it helps us save on a step, it helps us save on a process, and that allows us to manufacture the car quicker and therefore also cheaper. So I should also clarify that I don't necessarily believe that when Project Highland drops, it will be cheaper than the existing Model 3. You know, back when Tesla refreshed the Model S and X in 2021 with the yoke and the landscape display and everything, they raised prices by $10,000 while simultaneously admitting that this new updated Model S and X was cheaper to build than the Raven Model S and X it was replacing. So similarly, I think Tesla, as always, will price their vehicles according to what the market is demanding. And because there's likely going to be a lot of people that want to run out and buy the brand new Model 3, not just because of all these interior updates, but also because of all the exterior updates, you know, the new headlights, the new taillights, the updated grille and everything. It's going to be the talk of the town for the while, and I think that means there's going to be a lot of orders coming in, and Tesla's likely going to prepare for that, which means a price hike at first. But I do think because of all of the things they've learned from the Model Y ramp, this new Model 3 will long-term be cheaper to build, which means the margins will be really great at first, and then as demand slowly creeps back to normal, they'll be able to price the Model 3 lower than what they can currently price it today. But again, I don't think that's going to happen overnight. That could be a 6 to 12 month process. It all just depends on the demand that this refresh garnishes for the brand, and it also depends a lot on things we don't know, like what the battery pack and powertrain layouts are going to be. Most of the rumors right now are still pointing to the idea that Tesla is finally implementing CATL's new battery chemistry, the lithium iron manganese phosphate, which should mean high cycle life and, you know, no nickel, no cobalt, but still better energy density than what I get in my Model 3, which I think could end up meaning that they use the same size battery pack in all Model 3s. All Model 3s, whether you get a performance or just an all-wheel drive or a rear-wheel drive, they could all probably get around 300 plus miles with the same size battery pack, and that allows them to simplify the manufacturing a ton. Hopefully it means they still qualify for the federal tax credit as well, but if they're changing up the lineup and maybe going to just a two-car approach and say, let's just have a performance and then we just have a rear-wheel drive, that may simplify the manufacturing, but then the pricing and how they structure that is going to have an effect on the market demand as well. But I think it's also going to make a ton of people not want to buy the Model Y anymore, because they're going to be like, wait a minute, I got to wait for Project Juniper, because that's when the Model Y is going to get all of these updates. And I don't know, depending on the person, you know, if you really love gear stocks or you really prefer that Alcantara interior, you might prefer the more dated Model 3 and Y design, the kind that they're selling right now. But what do you guys think of these interior updates, the rumored exterior updates? Are you hoping they keep the gear stocks around? Do you want them to have a yoke? Feel free to speculate along with me down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.